This video covers segmentation and positioning for international marketing. As you should know, market segmentation is simply splitting up consumers on some basis of either need or characteristics, with the overall purpose of the company being able to have a better match or fit to the consumer's needs. In the old days, large firms used to try to have a mass market approach and appeal to everybody, but over time you had specialists that come along that would grab a piece of the market and take it away. So down here I've got an easiest example to think of this is a department store. So a department store, very large stores that have lots of merchandise and try to appeal to basically everybody. So along comes a specialist clothing store or a sporting store or a shoe shop or bookshop, etc. And you've got all these individual specialty stores competing against the mass marketer. And of course they meet the needs better. So segmentation and targeting become quite critical. In terms of international marketing, we can use it as a screening process to say, hey, that's a suitable potential country to enter. We can actually look to identify groups of countries, so segment and place them into the same segments. This obviously would work for a regional basis, but obviously helps us determine what products we can standardize through regions or sets of countries, which creates economies of scale, benefits, etc. Segmentation is often a tool that helps us understand the market differently and take a more analytical approach. Obviously we eventually select target markets, and internationally we may do a global segmentation, or we probably will, and then do further local segmentation. So basically the key steps are using segmentation to screen countries on some top level basis. Then once we've selected a few of those, to use some sort of market research and data collection, secondary data, to understand them better. Then we make a decision on which countries to enter, and we segment further and select perhaps target markets within the country. We would typically do that, and then construct our positioning and our supportive marketing mix, which they're generally standard steps we would go through, but for international marketing there's more emphasis there, and more steps to go through. So what we're looking at here's from an academic study into attitudes to research. A research study into attitudes to luxury. So different countries and talking to consumers. Some people see luxury, they're obviously more affluent people, and they see it's for them, or people potentially who don't connect either financially or emotionally to luxury brands, so not really for me. Here it's something open to everybody, or here it's really is for special people, and we can do it that way. The reason I'm showing you this is when we cluster them or group them, we can see we've got distinct sets of attitudes. So it's some form of behavioral segmentation. But we've got groups of countries segmented together in this that we would not necessarily think are interrelated. And here's another example. This is attitudes to advertising, or how responsive you are to types of advertising. So it's a rational type advertising or emotive type advertising. And there's a few more countries here, so it's a bit harder to read. But again, we're going to link very rational countries, very emotive type countries, neither, so probably a price situation there, midway and rational but not overly emotional, etc. Again, what we can see is we've created segments that we'd not normally think about. So it gives us the ability to perhaps in this case standardize, because this is about communication, so standardize communications in certain countries. Obviously we change the language, but it gives us a greater greater market size, which is part of what we're looking at. Okay, I've used the word cluster a couple of times. Here's just some output. I'm using the same positions of the countries, and I'm just using an Excel program to allow me to cluster. This one, there's no segments at this stage, and that's just the average of everybody. And here I've asked the software to split it into two segments. So we've got ones that are less emotional, ones that are highly emotional. And cluster analysis is a statistical technique that's designed to basically split these up. And I've gone all the way here and actually constructed 10 segments. So the question is there an end point? So basically, if I kept going, I'd end up with this situation everywhere, where I've got one segment, one country. Obviously, that's a possibility, but it's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to look, these two here, they are very similar. Let's treat them as one segment. These three blue boxes, they're fairly similar as well. Can we treat them as one particular segment? Sometimes you're going to have outliers and you don't have a choice, but what we're trying to do is construct segments rather than looking at individual countries when we're looking at a general global strategy. Okay, and they're the countries we had listed. So some of these are obvious. So again, Argentina and Brazil, probably no surprises there. But then we've got Sweden, UK, and Japan. So, gee, would we have thought that way? Okay, approaches to segmentation. We've got the three approaches. The first one's aggregate, looking at one top-level metric about the country, and using that as it says, a single metric to evaluate the country overall. So this is helping us screen potential countries in or out on some form of attractiveness. There are all various economic and demographic type measures there. This is also known as country level aggregation. So we can group them together. For example, here is just a list of GDP per capita, so some sort of income. So obviously these are the top of the list, so these are the more affluent countries in terms of size of the economy per population. So we might say, hey, these are wealthier countries, they've got greater capacity, so we might link them together. The opposite is when we're not using one aggregate measure, but we're using multiple or smaller measures. This is just what we do in domestic segmentation. So we're looking at consumers on an individual basis and looking at our standard basis, which I'll look at in a little bit. The two-stage option is obviously use this as some sort of screening thing, so top-level GDP per capita or population size or something, and then drilling down to something more precise. As we drill down to individual consumer segments, pretty much what we do in domestic marketing, but what we're trying to do is perhaps create global or regional segments where we've got the same type of consumer, so the same type, that is apparent across multiple countries or regions. Okay, so this is ideal if we have a fairly standardized approach and we can go, gee, that sort of consumer is common in a lot of geographic markets. Okay, so it's a sort of an economy or an efficiency approach. Here's an example here for Jack Daniels. As you can see, the type of communication in this case in China and in France is quite similar. Obviously the language changes, but other than that, the same sort of positioning can be used, appealing to the same type of consumer. Obviously, in a lot of cases, we're not going to be able to identify global type consumers that carry across multiple markets. So in that case, we'll need to have a segment basis just for that country, or perhaps a small group of countries, and we'll need to have some sort of localized strategy. Okay, here's our standard 4 main categories of segmentation. Obviously there's multiple divisions underneath. So if I quickly go through, demographic, as I got there, very popular. The reason it's popular is it's very easy to use, low cost, you can get from government statistics, etc. And there's variations of types of demographics, and they're more descriptors more than anything. What they're probably more helpful for is helping to profile and describe the segment a little bit more detail, and obviously we can use more than one segmentation basis. So typically we define the segment by some sort of lifestyle or psychographic segment or behavioral, and then use the demographic just to describe them. Okay, this is a combination, this is sort of like a social class type thing, combination of demographic factors, and we may expand that. But what that does is it pushes us into a social status measure, and the combination of these gives us some clues about lifestyles as well. So, how much money do they have to spend? Who are they probably mixing with? What's their social standing? Possibly how they use products to demonstrate their success, and so forth. So, even though it's still demographic, it helps us understand the consumer a little bit more. Behavior is their reaction to the product. So here's some various approaches to it here. But what it describes is how the consumer actually acts. So we change a price, what happens? We bring in a new product line, what happens? We don't understand necessarily why they're doing it, so the motivation's unclear. But we get a very structured analytical understanding of the segments, which means obviously it's very data driven. So if we've got access to a loyalty program or a consumer database, we can do that. Perhaps smaller brands may struggle to get the richness of data that would be required. Lifestyle or psychographic is understanding the consumer across their lifestyles, not just in terms of a product, but a general personality assessment and what's important to them. Various consultancy groups will sell or have pre-packaged research about that. This helps us understand the consumers from a motivation perspective, and then we try to overlay the product as needs as well. So basically that's segmentation and positioning for international marketing in a nutshell.